morning, everybody. I'm Christine Jacobs. For those, I see a number of new names, or seem to be new names to me. I'm the Executive Director of Represent PA. We are the PAC in Pennsylvania that supports women, progressive, democratic, pro-choice women who are running for the state legislature, both the House and the Senate in Pennsylvania. We support progressive positions of various kinds. But when we're evaluating candidates, the most important thing to us is that we make sure that our candidates are strong in their voices around choice. And that we've said that for years, and never has it been more important than it is now. When you listen to some of the things that are being said in Harrisburg, you know how important it is to change the players up there. And so I welcome you today, and I'm calling this one Code Red because it's gotten bad. And we're going to hear about that today. You know, I've had this slide on here before for other things, or variations on this slide. And what's capturing your passion today and in 2022 in terms of what you've heard, what's going on legislatively, and what you would like to see changed in Pennsylvania. And, you know, clearly today we're talking about abortion and women's health care. But this is a group in Harrisburg that are trying to deny your voting rights and trying to deny democracy and trying to get away from mail-in voting and trying to take over for the regular voting process. So they're trying to put forth some legislation that if they don't like how the votes go in a presidential election, rather than the electors being aligned with the votes as they come in, you know, the legislature thinks they should have more control over that. And that's scary. We're talking about fair, you know, people talk about fair funding of elections, education. A great deal of additional money has gone into education as a result of this year's budget, but not enough to make up for the losses and you know, what is really needed by our students in Pennsylvania. Gun safety. Gun safety is going to be our next subject that we're going to talk about on August 2nd. But again, with all the things going on about guns, don't we need a legislature who's going to legislate for protecting your safety and protecting our children? And also, of course, the environment and climate change and clean air and water. But you know what? No matter which of these issues is your most passionate one, nothing will change in Harrisburg without a Democratic governor and a Democratic majority in at least one chamber. As we'll talk about later, you know, we've said for a while, and part of the Josh Shapiro campaign is, hey, you know, my veto pen is in preserving abortion rights in Pennsylvania. But when you look at what this legislature has done, his veto pen on a constitutional amendment has no effect. And we're going to hear later, we need to flip at least one chamber, if not both, to get things done in Harrisburg. The picture of abortion has changed, and that's what we're talking about today. The Dobbs case and how it treated Roe and the precedents that Roe had set returns an awful lot of authority to the states and allows the states to come up with their own rules. And look what's happening, you know, the discussion that's been in the paper and in the news in the last few days has been about this 10-year-old girl from Ohio who was raped and was pregnant and could not get an abortion in Ohio. And her family had to take her to Indiana to get the abortion. What? Does that really make sense? And is that the way we want to do things? And that some of these things work for people who have money, but they really are affecting the people who don't have the ability to move between states and go find the care they need. Executive actions, we're worried about that. And our US Congress is stuck. And they can't get anything done without getting past the vetoes in the US Senate. And then we're also going to talk about Pennsylvania legislative actions. But we believe, and it's a core principle of Represent, and in all the candidates that we've supported over the last 6 or 8 years, we believe that full control of healthcare options for women is fundamental to what we believe in and fundamental to the change we've been trying to drive. So I'm really happy that we've got 3 wonderful people today, 3 wonderful women who are going to talk about this. Sue Frietsche has been with the Women's Law Project, and in addition to being a senior staff attorney, she's also interim co-executive director of the Women's Law Project. And she's working on a case right now, Allegheny Reproductive Health versus the Department of Human Services, which she will talk about. Senator Amanda Cappelletti is, she had been with Planned Parenthood. She's an attorney, but with a master's in public health. She's a perfect example of what we like to call reflective democracy. And reflective democracy is not only having both genders recognized, or all genders recognized, and all persuasions, all religions, all races, but it's also having all backgrounds. And it's so important to us that we have somebody who has a master's in public health. When we have people making public health decisions, we want the right kind of people and people who know to ask the experts in Harrisburg. Did you all hear Joanna McClinton, the minority leader of the House, talking recently about how a lot of these decisions are being made in Harrisburg about abortion and about women's health, and less than half of the body in Harrisburg have ever had a uterus. And so it's important that we have women, and it's important we have women with health backgrounds in Harrisburg. And then we're really pleased to have one of our main supporters, Kitty Kolbert, on. Kitty, as you may have heard her when she was on a few months ago talking about her recent book, Controlling Women, in which she makes the case that we really need to concentrate highly on what's going on in state legislatures. But she's also argued in front of the Supreme Court, including Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which was part of the discussion on the Dobbs case. So we're really happy to have her. So let's start with Sue Frietsche. Sue, what's going on in your world, and how safe is abortion in Pennsylvania?
Oh, things are awful. So, I really want to hear what Senator Cappelletti and my friend and mentor, Kitty Kolbert, have to say. So I am going to be relatively brief and, of course, available for questions. Pennsylvania was never in great shape when it comes to access to abortion. We have a ban on virtually all Medicaid coverage of abortion, which takes it very much out of reach of many low-income people. We have a whole series of restrictions that have gotten worse since Planned Parenthood versus Casey. We have waiting periods, parental consent, ridiculous lecture, doctor-only provisions, registration and reporting requirements that are rigidly enforced even by this administration. We have ambulatory surgical facility guidelines that require hundreds of pages of exceptions, requests, and extraordinary expense for very safe providers simply to stay open. It is really difficult to be an abortion provider even before the Supreme Court took away our rights. As a result, Pennsylvania, which is thought of as an access state, has all but 17 freestanding abortion providers, and that's where upwards of 95% of abortion care is delivered in Pennsylvania. It's not done through hospitals.
17 in the whole state?
17 in the whole state.
And are those concentrated in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, or are they all over the state?
They're in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. There is nothing north of the two Pittsburgh clinics, nothing in Erie, nothing in State College. Then there's nothing until you get to Harrisburg, and at Harrisburg you have only a medication abortion provider, not a procedural abortion provider. So we're already vastly an abortion desert, except for a few counties, really. When you take away Roe, you know the projections that about half of the states either already have or are in the process of criminalizing all or most abortion. And one study that was done for the National Abortion Federation prior to the Dobbs ruling estimated that about 300,000 women would lose, women and other people with childbearing capacity lived in states where they would be losing access to abortion and need it. And of those 300,000, 100,000 would have the ability to travel to a nearby state that had access. And the reason this map is so important is that if you look at Pennsylvania and look at what is surrounding us, you can see that we are in a position of our two little dots there in Allegheny County are the closest point of access for people coming from West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky, and for some people in Indiana. So we're already absorbing a huge number of other states' patients. We are one of 5 regions in the country expected to absorb the most of those 100,000 travelers. And what that means is it is going to become extremely difficult to get an appointment in Pennsylvania. It's not just that other people have to travel to us to get abortion care. It's that our people in Pennsylvania are not going to be able to get an appointment in time, are going to find ourselves going to New York and Washington, D.C. and Canada. So when we say that we are an access state, you know, things are not good here. We do not have a lot of access here. On the ground, our providers are operating almost around the clock. There were doctors at one of our clinics out here until 11 o'clock at night. You know, the morale is very bad, I would say. Everyone is fighting as hard as they can, but I'm getting calls from doctors saying, I perform legal abortions legally and safely in Pennsylvania, where it is legal. When am I going to get arrested? And, you know, the idea that a doctor doing a legal procedure in a state where abortion is legal should have to worry about getting arrested is obscene.
So
I'm worried. Yes.
2 questions for you. First, somebody asked if Delaware, New York, and New Jersey were color coded, would they be very protected, or how do you know, I'm just trying to fill in the rest of the
I think they would
Pennsylvania.
be. Yeah, those are our states where abortion is protected.
And when you're talking about people, doctors being afraid, I read that Tom Wolf had just signed some kind of action that protects doctors. Is that not right?
Yes. So the scenario is that a prohibition state would try to come after a state like Pennsylvania for providing abortion care to a resident of a prohibition state. In Ohio, for example, there is a 6-week ban in effect now. And we know from Ohio residents that there are rural prosecutors in parts of Ohio who think that if an Ohio resident travels to Pennsylvania, gets mifepristone, travels back to Ohio, takes misoprostol and ends the pregnancy there, that is an illegal abortion in Ohio, and that Ohio prosecutors have jurisdiction to reach into Pennsylvania, subpoena records from our providers, and go after our providers under their laws. Now that is wrong, but that's what they want to do. And so Governor Wolf's executive order says that no one under the control of the executive branch of the state government can cooperate with that. Now that's good. It's not bulletproof. So, you know, I think there is some rational cause for providers, even in a state like ours, where there is still legal protection, to worry about predatory states and extremists in those other states coming after our providers. I am especially worried about minors who are traveling. I'm worried about helpers who are driving people to and from appointments across state lines. And I think we have to do more to protect these people, because you know what, even if they have a defense, and even if the defense is successful, who really wants to be prosecuted by an Ohio rural prosecutor? No one. And that will chill the provision of abortion care, you know, even when they don't have a chance in hell of having a successful prosecution. So let me stop there. I'm happy to answer more questions, but let me, turn this over to Senator Cappelletti.
So for those, I described to you what Senator Cappelletti's background is, having worked for Planned Parenthood and being an advocate for women's health. So how hard is it to be in Harrisburg these days, going through these debates, being at the 11th hour on the, late at night when the constitutional amendment was passed?
Wow, is it frustrating. You find that you are arguing with people who fundamentally do not understand how a uterus works or how procreation happens. And it is absolutely mind-boggling. Start with some good news, because you guys heard me talking a little bit about the executive order that was offered by Governor Wolf. That came through not long after the Women's Health Caucus, which I co-chair with Representative Mary Jo Daley, and Morgan Cephas, and Senator Judy Schwenk. The four of us together work really hard to address all kinds of issues that affect women's health. And that's really taking a broad intersectional lens of all of those things. And we sent a letter to the governor urging him to take actions like other states have, like Massachusetts, and I'm forgetting the others off the top of my head, but we sent him a letter asking him to do this, and he responded and did it. He has been an incredible advocate and ally for this cause and has made it clear, and was reelected twice on the platform, that he would continue to protect the right to reproductive health care and abortion care specifically. He would never sign legislation. And that was amazing, because throughout his tenure, he saw quite a few pieces of legislation make it to his desk. Some of the most restrictive abortion pieces of legislation, 6-week bans, you're talking about disability bans, being, making the decision to end a pregnancy based on a disability diagnosis of a fetus, all kinds of things. And he vetoed each and every one of them. However, what has happened since then is the Republican Party has gotten what we'll call creative about pushing their unpopular policies. They're throwing what I like to call a temper tantrum about not getting their policies signed, especially around access to abortion care. And they have put out a number of constitutional amendments to do all kinds of terrible things, including a constitutional amendment that says that there is no right to abortion care funding or any other right to abortion care here in Pennsylvania. Now, what is the problem with a constitutional amendment? I think most of you have heard me say, there's some of you have heard me say this before, but a governor cannot veto a constitutional amendment. A constitutional amendment goes through the Senate and the House in one session, and then it has to repeat that cycle again with the exact same language. And if it goes through 2 consecutive sessions in a row, it is then put on the ballot for voters to decide. Now, what's the problem with voters deciding and saying we believe in abortion to access, and we believe in access to abortion care? They're doing all of this under the cloak of darkness, and we have absolutely no requirements that constitutional amendments end up on a ballot during, I don't know, a presidential election, a gubernatorial election. They are putting the timing together just right to put this on the May 23 primary ballot. That is an off-year election in a primary where it is, statistically speaking, the least amount of voters and the least amount of Democrats who vote. So this is not putting it to the representatives of this entire Commonwealth. This is putting it to the least amount of people. Not to mention, it just isn't right. We should not be legislating through constitutional amendment. That is an awful, awful thing, because most of the time, the way these things are worded, people don't read them. They think if we've put a constitutional amendment on the ballot, well, gee, the General Assembly must have vetted this. This must be good. And then they end up voting yes without realizing what they're voting for. That's what we're up against. And recently what has happened when we were, 7-8 days past a budget, when we should have had a budget together, we were supposed to be done on June 30th. And we're, at the beginning of July at 10:30 at night, they pull up a Rules Committee vote. And that was to talk about Senate Bill 106. Senate Bill 106 was a vehicle for multiple constitutional amendments that are completely unrelated. And prior to that night, the abortion language was not in there. At 10:30 at night, they made a motion to put the abortion language in there. While most people were sleeping, we were debating whether or not it was appropriate to put that language into this constitutional amendment bill. And unfortunately, it passed along party lines and out of that committee, and it came to a floor vote the next day, where again, as we are fighting to finish a budget, which Pennsylvania deserves a budget, we are arguing about access to abortion care and what does that mean here in Pennsylvania. After multiple hours of arguing, I'd say it was probably about 3 to 3.5 hours arguing on the floor of the Senate, it passed the Senate. And surprisingly, it was not party line votes, but at the end of the day, every single Republican that is in the General Assembly is accountable for what happened. They voted for the leadership that put this all together, put this plan together, and made it move. They are accountable for this, and we need to flip the legislature. Not only because that is the only way to stop constitutional amendments, but also because we absolutely need to put more responsible people in charge of deciding the policies of Pennsylvania and how things move and how it works. It is enough that absolutely enough. I'm tired of these games of doing things in the cloak of darkness where there's no transparency. People don't know what's going on, and you all deserve better. Every citizen of this Commonwealth deserves better, and we need to invest everything we have. Represent is an incredible organization. I need you guys to support it, to not only flip the legislature, but to get me more women in the legislature who can credibly talk to how a uterus works, how an ectopic pregnancy works, what the treatments are, and why these things are important to continue to ensure that we have access in Pennsylvania to abortion care. Is that fiery enough for you, Chris?
You're the best, Amanda. Thank you. This year, as we were starting our endorsement process, a couple of the current women in the Senate I was talking to on the phone, and I said, well, we're going to work, and I'm not sure the Senate is flippable, et cetera. And they said, send us more just like Senator Cappelletti. She is exactly what we need in Harrisburg. She's exactly the kind of person who will fight for women. I loved your description also of the things they don't understand about women's biology. One of my favorites is somebody, and I don't know if it was in Pennsylvania, had made a comment, well, 6 weeks, if somebody's been pregnant for 6 weeks, they should know. And you kind of go, Are you aware that the way you count the number of weeks of pregnancy is from the beginning of the previous period, the beginning of the previous cycle? So if you have a 4-week cycle, it has only been 2 weeks since you missed your period. And a lot of women have variable cycles. These are just kind of unknown things to the people making this kind of legislation. So yes.
Absolutely.
So, and I'm sure you've heard a lot more of the stories, Amanda, just in the way people talk about these things.
Absolutely. I will say, as somebody, and I've mentioned this on the floor of the Senate, and I will continue to talk about it to change the conversation, but I had 2 miscarriages in 4 months during my last year. And the things they are talking about banning ban the treatments that I was told I might need if my body did not expel the miscarriages on their own. And to think of what that might have done to me in that time frame while I was processing what I was going through and knowing that I wouldn't have access to treatment is horrifying. Absolutely horrifying.
Okay, is there anybody on this call listening in who's not getting angrier? I mean, it just does it. So let's move on to Kitty Kolbert. Kitty, how do you view this? You've got, Sue mentioned that you were one of her mentors. Planned Parenthood versus Casey was 30 years ago. What's going on in the landscape from your point of view? And where are you on this subject right now?
Well, thanks, Christine. And I want to give a special thanks to all of you who have tuned in this morning. 8:30 in the morning is early, and I know it's great to see so many friends and so many people, more importantly, so many people I don't know, because it means that there is a wider group of people who support reproductive freedom, and I thank you for that. I want to do two things this morning. First, I want to tell you a little bit about what the Supreme Court did and what that means nationally. And then I want to really focus on Pennsylvania and what you can do to make a difference. I spent on Tuesday at a small meeting in New York with some of the icons of our movement, Faye Waddleton, who used to run Planned Parenthood, and Gloria Steinem. And they reminded me two things. One is that this question is intimate and personal and different for every person in this country. And I'm sure that all of you have an abortion story. It is either I missed a period and I'm afraid I'm pregnant and I'm thrilled and I have the right to carry that pregnancy to term with health care that's good, or I choose to terminate the pregnancy. And when the Supreme Court takes away a right that is so fundamental to all of our everyday lives, they are not just willy-nilly changing the law, which of course they're doing, but they're making an impact on the most intimate decision that most people make in their lifetime. And I think that is why we all feel so strongly about an opinion that essentially relegates women to have to seek illegal health care and relegates women to allow politicians to make decisions for them rather than regulating their own bodily autonomy and integrity. So the Supreme Court decision, in my view, is the most outrageous one I've ever seen. It totally, first of all, for the first time in history, it takes away a fundamental constitutional right. Second, it goes much broader and suggests a roadmap for how to take away the right to contraception, the right to gay marriage, the right to marrying a person of a different race, the right to travel, for pretty much every unenumerated right that has been granted in the 2 centuries that we have interpreted the Constitution. And most importantly, in my view, it really establishes that the individual proclivities of an ultra-conservative court can control the rule of law and takes away any notion of stare decisis as the underlying principle that we should regulate our lives. That being said, the real question now is what can each and every one of us do? I urge you to look at the focus groups that the New York Times printed this morning, particularly the pro-choice focus group, because I think it was really instructive in showing that most Americans don't even people who agree with us, don't understand who has abortions, why people have abortions, a connection to their individual lives. They don't understand medication abortion and how that works. The fact that 50% of abortions today are done by medication. And they don't understand the implications of what will happen when states have the right to ban abortion. And I think what that says to me is each of us on this call has a responsibility to make sure that our friends and our family, even if you think they're with us, understand the implications of what is going on. And what Amanda said in terms of the constitutional amendment in Pennsylvania is, the first message is abortion is not safe in this state and won't be safe in this state until the Democrats control both the House and the Senate and the gubernatorial seat. We need a trifecta win to actually win back the rights we have already lost and the rights that potentially could be lost if Republicans control. So it is up to all of us to talk about it, to remove the stigma, to make sure that we all understand what is at stake. Second, and this is a Represent call, and I'm thrilled to be involved with Represent. My wife, Joanne, has been organizing fundraisers. She has been reminding me over and over again to make sure you all understand that your dollars makes a huge difference in electing pro-choice women to the Pennsylvania House and Senate. And the only way we're going to improve the number of women in the House and potentially have the Democrats control is if we can elect some of the really wonderful women who are running for office across this state. So your dollars makes a huge difference, but your time also makes a huge difference. Okay, this isn't just about giving dollars. Give dollars, absolutely. But you can organize a fundraiser. You can join fundraisers that are already in progress. You can canvass in state legislative districts. In the suburban counties, Bucks County in particular, can use your help to get elected pro-choice women in Bucks County. And Lehigh Valley and the areas around Lancaster, good opportunities for pickup of seats. Your time working in those campaigns. If everyone on this call, and there's over 100 of you on this call, if every one of you volunteered 1 day a week, or even 3 hours a week to make phone calls or to go knock doors in any of the legislative districts, only between now and November, we can make a huge impact. So I urge us all to do that. And lastly, I want to say 2 things. This is not a fight that is going to be won in the next election. Okay, this is a lifetime fight. This is a fight that requires our dedication, because even if we win the Pennsylvania House, our opponents, or the Senate, our opponents aren't going away. I will predict right now that in December, right after the election, when it won't matter to the election, the constitutional amendment is going to change wording. It's no longer going to say, oh, the right to choose abortion is not in the Pennsylvania Constitution. It's going to say, we want to ban abortion in Pennsylvania. A direct ban put into the Pennsylvania Constitution. They don't want to do this now because they're afraid it's going to wake up the masses who disagree with them. But they'll do it in December. And if they don't do it in December, they'll do it in January. And if they lose this race, you say they're successful at getting a constitutional amendment on the ballot, they'll keep at it and take away other rights that are sacred to us. So we can't be complacent any longer. Our daughters, our granddaughters, our families are dependent on our activism. So we can't agonize any longer. We need to organize, and getting active is really key to all of that. So I want to end by just saying that it's very disturbing to me that my grandchildren have fewer rights than I had through my reproductive years. As a lesbian woman who had children well before it was a cool thing to do or recognized as something to do, the notion of being able to decide when, whether, how, and with whom one has children is so fundamental to our being that we need to dedicate our lifetimes to restoring the rights that have been taken away. So thank you so much, and I'm thrilled to with Sue and Amanda to take questions from all of you.
And I want to thank all 3 of you. We'll get to questions in a minute. I just have, you know, one of the things that Kitty said really hit me, and that's that we all have abortion stories. And I have an abortion story, and I haven't talked about it for the last 40-something years just because I didn't feel like I needed to. But I've been destigmatizing my own abortion in recent days, in that I had one less than a year after Roe. And I was in college. I didn't understand birth control, and I got pregnant. And there was no way I was going to have a baby because it wasn't a relationship that was going to last. And in my family, I would have been would have had a lot of issues with my parents had I done this. So I would have been a candidate for a back alley abortion, which might have gone well, might not have gone well, might have affected my ability to have the 3 children that I have now. And I was stupid. But I was able to have one. For $200, I went to a clinic in San Francisco and got it done. And I think about that as I go through all of these gyrations. I know what my story is. They say that 1/4 of women have had them. But as Kitty said, we all have stories of our friends, our relatives who have been affected by these laws, and things are going to change. We have some other fundraisers coming up. Kitty said raising money. We've got several coming up in Center City, Philadelphia. We've got one this coming weekend, or the 18th, I think, in the Poconos. We have one August 30th, I think that somebody just put in the chat, in Pittsburgh. So we're trying to introduce people to the issues, introduce people to the concepts, get our state legislators or candidates out meeting people so that you know where your money is going. And so that I'll get to the rest of my commercial later. So what other questions do you have for Sue and Kitty and Amanda? And somebody asked a question, why don't we have more men on these calls? Good question. But what other questions do you have? Sue, do you want to chime in on anything that Kitty brought up?
I just am so inspired always, Kitty, to hear your call to action. And I wish everybody could be on this call and could hear it. I echo everything you're saying from my 501c3 perspective.
Amanda, so what's going on in the state legislature on this coming up? You've finished the budget. You've got this constitutional amendment out there. Are there more hearings coming up? Is there anything you can do?
Great question. So budget is passed. We are not due back in Harrisburg for a bit of time, not until September. So as I mentioned, the Women's Health Caucus, we are working to put together a bunch of different events to help educate people. And that's the key part right now, right? People need to understand how a constitutional amendment works and what's happening and why it's a threat now and what we can do.
Amanda, not hearing you.
Up. The first one is on oh shoot. Can you hear me now? It's sorry, it's there I am. Okay, so we have a policy hearing. We have 4 of them that we're scheduling. We have one in Harrisburg coming up on July 19th. And then we have one in Philadelphia and one in Pittsburgh. Those 2 will be roughly on the same topic, a post-Roe world. And we're going to have one in September as well on this issue to help give a call to action on what we should be doing, what people need to know about what's happening. And I would encourage you to reach out to your state legislators. Let them know that there is a bill out there to codify Roe, and I think here in Pennsylvania. And I think the piece to think about with that is hopefully being able to change some of the Abortion Control Act requirements that we have, like having to tell a parent if you're under the age of 18, the waiting periods, things, the onerous things that were really put into place by Casey v. Planned Parenthood. So that's what we're looking at there. There is another constitutional amendment to encourage your friends and family to reach out that would put into place in our Constitution the right to privacy. And that includes not just abortion care, but all of those other things that Justice Thomas mentioned in his concurring opinion that we should, quote unquote, be considering. So that's to help protect both our rights and liberties as women and gender nonconforming people and the LGBTQ community, to really provide that support. So that's what's going on there. And then we'll be hopefully hosting different press events as well about what's going on with reproductive health care here in Pennsylvania throughout the summer.
So we've had a few questions. Thank you. We've had a few questions in the chat about when are the Women's Health Project events and when are we doing some other fundraisers. As a follow-up to this call today, we will send you a list of all the locations where we've got fundraisers planned, but you can also plan your own and just let us know. You know, there's so many other things you can do, and we've talked about fundraising, we've talked about money, but you have to be active and you have to be prepared to talk about these subjects as much as we can. I just want to give everyone a reminder. Nothing is going to change in Harrisburg. You can call your legislator, you can tell them how important these things are, but Senator Cappelletti can tell you, nothing is going to change unless we flip the chambers in the legislature, period. We now have 90 Democrats and 113 Republicans in the state legislature. We've got 20 districts where we have candidates who've received endorsement from us. 10 or so are really targeted as high probability and really good chances for winning. In the Senate, we have 20 Democrats and 28 Republicans currently in the number doesn't add to 50. I'll have to figure out where I goofed there. But we need to flip more seats there. We have endorsed 6 women altogether for the Senate. 3 of them are really, really strong candidates. We've given them all money, but we need to give more to the candidates. Pennsylvania, you know, you want to know why we're in the state we are. We rank 31st in the states in terms of percentage of women in the legislature. We've made a lot of progress. In 2016, we ranked 40th, but we need to do more. We need to flip seats, period. That is what we need to do in order to have control over our bodies and the legislation. What's our philosophy at Represent? We invest in women running for the PA House and the Senate. In 2020, we invested $500,000. So far this year, we've been at 397, and we've got another 40 or so in the bank to get ready. We're going to surpass that $50,000, or at least we're trying hard to do that. Every dollar that we get from now on is going to go in. We've covered our expenses for the year, so every additional dollar you send us will go to candidates. Will go towards candidates who have a chance of winning. We go to candidates who have a chance to flip the legislature so that women like Amanda, who are working hard to represent all of Pennsylvania, will have more support, and the decisions will have more support. But both your time and your money are needed this year. They're always needed. They're needed even more this year. You know, your vote is your minimum contribution. It's the minimum. Getting your family and friends to vote, that's pretty close to minimum too. You need to volunteer. We flipped the legislature, and Joanna, it can be in the lead. She's a minority leader now, but if she's the speaker, a whole lot of different things will happen. Amanda can tell you that you can't even bring up legislation on these subjects. We don't control, no Democrats control the conversation in Harrisburg. The conversation is controlled by the majority, and we are not the majority in either house. So as I said, you know, or volunteer to be a poll worker, all good things. Share your passion. I'm passionate about this. A number of you are too. Share your passion with everybody you know so that people know how important this is to you. And raise money. Your money, other people's money, raise it. Check out our website, volunteer with us, contact us, and let us know you know, what's important to you so that if we do future events. So I'd like just a final couple words from each of our speakers. Sue, what else would you like to say in conclusion?
So there have been a couple of questions about whether the Pennsylvania Constitution provides some protection now that we know the federal one does not. And we have litigation currently pending before the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to try to overrule a 1985 case that upheld the ban on Medicaid coverage of abortion. So we are trying to restore Medicaid coverage for abortion with that case. We're relying on the Pennsylvania Equal Rights Amendment and the equal protection provisions of our state constitution. And we hope that ruling in our favor in that case would provide new and powerful protection for abortion rights. But I have got to say, nobody in this room should be counting on the courts to save us. That is the strategy that we, of necessity, followed for so many years. And that is the strategy that got us where we are today. So I just want to leave you with that caution that activism is the way to actually win for good.
We are the ones who can help us. We've got fabulous attorneys like Sue, like Kitty, like so many others who are working for this, but we are the ones who can bring about change. That means you, Amanda.
Trust me, I'm going to do everything in my power. I have tried every argument under the sun, and I will keep fighting and working with incredible partner organizations like the Women's Law Project on the official side, like you guys on the political side, to do whatever we can to change what is happening in this Commonwealth of ours.
That's great. You know, Joanne put a comment in there about supporting some of the candidates who don't have a chance of winning, even just to draw away funds and support from some of the truly nasty Republicans out there. That's been a philosophy of Represents. We haven't supported male candidates, but we've supported a number of women who are running in races that we don't think they have a chance of winning. But we're so proud of them for running. We want to give them money and support. We also want to make sure that all the work that they're doing is drawing money away from the Republican who's holding that seat. We also think that a number of those women, as part of the coordinated campaign, can help provide more votes to Fetterman and Shapiro in their races by, you know, attracting more Democratic voters. It's important. It's important to vote in all of these races. You know, Amanda, somebody just asked a question. Are there any women in the legislature who would support the right to abortion and act on that? Or are most of them just following the what's needed by their leadership?
So I will say Senator Lisa Baker. She is not the most vocal and does not always support all of the good pieces of legislation, but she is moderately pro-choice, did vote against this amendment. And as the story has been told to me, and I don't know the details, she does have some type of experience in this space that leads her to vote against these types of restrictions, especially a constitutional amendment one.
But I got to tell you, in that race, we've supported and have supported Jackie Baker, who's running against her.
Oh. So, as you should every time.
As we should.
I don't have
we need, wherever we can, we will not have the majority and therefore the majority leader and therefore setting the agenda if we don't elect these.
Exactly. There is no love lost there. I'm glad she voted the right way on the amendment, but I promise you, if Jackie beats her, if we get Jackie there, I would be thrilled to have her.
Well, thank you very much. Any other, last minute questions? I appreciate everybody's enthusiasm, their passion for this subject this morning on a Thursday morning in the middle of the summer. This is important. This is an all hands event. And as I said, August 2nd, we're going to be talking about gun violence protection, because again, it is so important. And it's just another one of those issues that nothing is going to change in Harrisburg until the Democrats get the majority. And I'm counting on the wonderful women that we're supporting to carry us there. Have a good day. Thank you all for being such good supporters and following Represent.